Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Recollection Step, a Grand Archive TCG podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Taylor. And today we have a special guest with us, David from the Banish Zone in Wernersville, Pennsylvania. He's here to help promote the regional they're running there towards the end of April 27th. And David, why don't you take a quick introduction, and then we can kind of walk us through your experience hosting some of these events and all the cool things happening at the Banish Zone and what it's like kind of helping run these GA events out in the Northeast.
Sure. My name is David Weinstein. I have been a TO, tournament organizer for Grand Archive at the Banish Zone, roughly around since FTC released. I have been playing TCGs for over 30 years. So this is not my first one, but it is kind of like the first time that I started like really organizing a community around myself.
So, David, you were telling us a little bit before we jumped into this about the Banish Zone itself. It was sounded kind of like an interesting, it's a little different than your typical LGS at this point in how kind of the ownership works and everything. And it went through maybe some turbulence a little bit before this. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Banish Zone in general?
Yeah. So the previous owner of the store, before it was called the Banish Zone, I was getting out, basically. And there were many people who went there quite frequently. Initially, it was like most of like the Flesh and Blood community who was playing there, which is another TCG. And they decided amongst themselves, I think it was a group of 4 or 5 people, and they said that they wanted to pretty much buy the store. So they invested in the store itself, and now it's essentially run by lovers and players of TCGs. So there's like multiple owners. Certain people have certain percentages of ownership in the store, and it's a really fantastic experience because talking to a lot of the owners is just like talking to anyone else who you would be playing cards with.
So Flesh and Blood still a part of it, right? And we have you guys are running Grand Archive events, which of course we're super pumped about. What other what does the TCG spectrum look like at the Banish Zone now that the players are in control of things?
Oh, it's kind of there's a bunch of them. They're running a lot of smaller ones too. There's Final Fantasy TCG. It has been run. Lorcana. There's the Magic Club as well. They're very much hyped about Star Wars. There's been a lot of Star Wars stuff. They're very well invested in that. And as I've said, of course, Grand Archive. So I believe they're also trying to kickstart some Alpha Clash as well. So, yeah.
Cool. So how does that, typically when you have an LGS, you got kind of an owner and he just calls all the shots about, what they're supporting and what they're not. How does it work? Is there a spirit of like a lot of collaboration between the different co-owners? And I assume everyone's kind of got their favorite game that they're pushing into, or is there a little bit of competition for like slots on the schedule? How does it all work?
There are definitely favorites. One of the owners is very much into Star Wars Unlimited, but there's not only collaboration between the folks who own the Banish Zone, but also the people who come in and play. I have felt like I have been able to collaborate with them quite frequently, especially with scheduling. We've done a couple of different times for Grand Archive. We've recently changed it to earlier in the afternoon, so we don't conflict with, say, Lorcana, or now running Star Wars Unlimited. And really the goal is to be able to have people say, hey, you want to come on Saturday and play 3 different TCGs? They're all firing one after another, and they're not going to conflict with one another.
That's awesome. Especially when we're, from Grand Archive's perspective, we're talking about a TCG that is, this slow, steady growth, but still a smaller TCG, as it were right now. And I hear from a lot of LGSs, just about all that. We cover lots of small TCGs. Anytime we cover a smaller TCG, it's, well, they like supporting Magic and Pokemon, don't really have time for these smaller ones. So do you feel the way the Banish Zone operates is potentially maybe more conducive to getting these smaller TCGs on the schedule, since you have that varied interests and not just kind of one person going where perhaps, the easiest sales are or something?
I think it is, if the community rises to the occasion, they'll help support it. I kind of found, funny enough, found out about Grand Archive when I was ordering Flesh and Blood cards, and someone used Grand Archive cards to like back the Flesh and Blood.
Oh, nice.
Pulled out the card, like, wow, the quality of this card is really good. What is this game? And as I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I had a real appreciation for the artwork and the design. So from there, I started to learn more about it, and the store had happened to get some of the product in previously, and they had a small interest in it. And I started to participate in the small events. It was only a handful of people. And it was kind of difficult to get product at first, but once the Alter reprint started coming out, I just kind of naturally jumped in and was kind of like, hey, have you heard of this? Hey, have you heard of Grand Archive? And because I was putting in that kind of effort, the owners of the Banish Zone were just like, well, we're going to try and help you out. We're going to try and get the product for you, and for this community that you're trying to grow.
That's so nice to hear, because a lot of the time we hear from people who just feel like their LGSs are not, are not trying to support them at all. But a lot of the time the truth is LGSs just need to know that there's people out there to support. And it's kind of a two-way street. Often you need to get people into the store, but you also need to have the owners who are willing to say, oh, well, if you're bringing people, I'm going to provide I'm going to provide the space and I'll provide the product as long as you buy it through us. Right. There's kind of a trade-off there.
Sure. And the community that they have kind of grown just around all their card games is one of giving. So you'll have people who are very established in a card game. They have tons of bulk, and kind of like the tradition there is just, oh, new player, here's my bulk. let's build you a deck. Let's build you something that can get you started. You have people who are opening up starter decks just to try and crack a CSR, and they're like, all right, here, take this back and give it to someone who's interested. And we have like a stack of them behind the counter now, and we just give them to people who are interested in starting to play.
That's excellent. You really love to hear that, to see the community kind of rally around growing the game that way. Oftentimes for like new players in these games, it's really difficult to kind of figure out where to get started, especially if you don't have access to a lot of singles, or you've got to buy them all through TCG Player or something. Like it gets overwhelming trying to figure out what to find. So when you've got a community who has a ready supply of cards they're willing to lend out or even give out in this situation, it really helps grow that community really quickly.
And the one thing is, the Banish Zone isn't like shy about stocking singles either. They cracked a whole bunch of cases for DOA, for FTC, ALC, and we've got singles aplenty, as well as a lot of common bulk for players to go through and purchase.
And just recently, out at nationals too, like we know that there's a group of dedicated players there, because we had Steve from who's in the area there, who just managed to qualify for Worlds, which is super exciting. And Corbin from the Maindeck team just barely didn't make it into.
He bubbled out right under you, Dan.
I know, right? I know. I stole the spot from him, unfortunately. We'll be talking about that more a little later in the episode when we go through our nationals recap. But yeah, I mean, it was great. We've had Corbin in the Maindeck community for a long time now. And he's just been a wonderful help. And like, I already knew, there's got to be a good community around this area, because Corbin's just been an incredible community leader in Maindeck. Super, super awesome guy. and I always love when we get to hang out with him at these events.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. He and his wife have shown up several times for our events. We partially actually changed our events to be earlier in the afternoon just so he and his wife could come and play.
Excellent.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, speaking of events now, the reason, David, that you're on here, of course, is because you guys got selected to run at the Banish Zone Regional on April 27th. And regionals, of course, are they're big deals. They're big events for Grand Archive. They are one of the easiest ways to, easiest quote unquote ways to earn invites. And specifically because they have top 16 all get invites. When you go to your store championship, which you should absolutely attend your store championship, but wherever your local is, the winner gets the invite card, which with the new ALC season ALC season is just going to earn you points towards nationals next year, where you do need to hit a threshold. So players out there who are looking to be competitive, they're going to need to hit their store champs, try and win that coveted one slot. But if you can attend a regional event, there are 16 slots available to you to be able to try and qualify for. It's a little less daunting to try and hit that threshold, right? Ascents, of course, do top 32, but there's only so many ascents in the year, and they tend to be in like pretty big locations. Whereas there's more of these regionals strewn throughout there. So I think, I like to push people to try and go to regionals. If you up here, we have a terrible situation. There's only the closest one's like 12 hours away from us. We're going to work on improving that next season. But for anyone in your area, David, other than the fact that this is one of the easier ways to try and score some of those points towards nationals, why should they be looking at your regional to attend?
Well, outside of the fact that it's a fantastic play space, the regionals at the Banish Zone is also going to include, on top of the normal promotions and awards that you can get at any regional, we're also including an additional 1K worth of prizing to the top players at our regional. We're also doing several on demands. So you travel a long way, you have bad luck, you go X and 3. We're going to be running some on demands afterwards, where there'll be booster box prizing for those who have a bad time but don't necessarily want to drive all the way back home, because we know we definitely have some people who are going to be driving quite a while to come already. I know several people from Ohio, a couple from the Virginia area are going to be coming up, and we hope to see people from all over the place. We had a fantastic turnout with people from the DC area coming up to our store for our last store champions. And that was amazing to meet a lot of those people. So I hope to see people from all over the Northeast Mid-Atlantic region at our regional event.
Yeah, it's very awesome to hear about the additional value and prizes that you guys are adding to. One of the common kind of complaints about a lot of these regionals is that with how far some people have to travel, a lot of the pricing is just kind of not necessarily always enough of an incentive to make like the 6 or 7 or 8 hour drive, or however long it needs to be for people. Weebs has done some work with that as well to provide like these Sapphire event packs now for regionals, where you can get the starter exclusive cards as foils, which are really cool. But yeah, you guys adding additional pricing on top of that is just fantastic, and hopefully we'll draw in a lot more players on top of what who already would have come over for.
This is all Banish Zone ownership again. Like, they're the ones who said, yeah, you get the people here. We're absolutely on board with doing additional prizing like this, additional 1K prizing. They've held very successful 1Ks for Flesh and Blood in the past, and they hope to carry that on to all of their events, including Grand Archive and more.
Yeah, that's great. And like, we're big proponents of cash prizing here. The thing I always say about these tournaments is that, like, when I compete in a tournament and I perform well enough to earn some sort of cool exclusive promo, I'm actually, as a long-term person, just invested in the game and enjoying every aspect of the game. I really don't want to sell my cards that I get just so that I can, attend the next event or something. At some point, I'm looking to accumulate some really cool stuff that I can look at and go, yeah, that, that was from when I played in that event. That's when I was able to win that thing. But still be able to afford to, travel to these events. So I find cash prizing just absolutely essential for running these events. So I was really excited to see that Banish Zone was willing to put up some cash prizing. And I hope people attend these events too, because the one thing that a store like the Banish Zone needs to see is to get that attendance, to get the people there so that they go, this is what people want. This is good. This is exactly what people want to see. And we're going to do that again. We're going to keep doing that in the future. When something like this doesn't quite, pan out, maybe they don't get the money there, then it can be there's a little less incentive sometimes to go ahead and like try that again in the future or something. So it's just it's like a vote with your wallet kind of thing. If people out there are in the area and find, they can have April 27th available to maybe travel down, I highly encourage everyone, as close as you are able to be able to get over to the Banish Zone for this regional. I think you'll find a wonderful store, a great community, and a wonderful event with some excellent cash prizing as well.
Mm-hmm.
We might have some additional surprises for folks who attend as well, in the form of various different raffles and other unannounced prizing. So.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. Not to mention the competition should be like top notch here. You'll get to test your skills out against a lot of really good players. Especially if I'm not sure if Steve and Corbin are attending. I heard Corbin might be judging potentially.
Yeah, Corbin's going to be a judge.
Okay.
Yes, Corbin will be judging, but Steve, you'll have to you might have to face Steve as sort of your roadblock to getting into that top cut. And you can beat him up and tell him Maindeck sent you. I think that'd be fun.
He's our weekly roadblock. Everyone is gunning to beat Steve just so that they can crash his elo.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is now you can farm elo off of him. That's what I'm excited about for Taylor locally. Taylor somehow at Nationals skyrocketed his elo playing in Nationals and then the regional event. And my elo did not take quite as high of a jump. So I am looking forward to farming a little bit of elo off of Taylor in the future.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, David, do you have anything else that you want to give to our audience here?
I absolutely love the Grand Archive community. I've been hanging out in the Discord. I don't talk a lot outside of advertising our events, but I love seeing everything that happens. I love the ability to actually talk to the developers right there in the Discord. That's incredible.
Yes.
And I am just astonished what Weebs has been able to accomplish with such a small team. It is definitely obvious to me that it is not only a labor of love for them, but the community notices and loves all of that as well. And it's something that I feel is frequently missing in a lot of card games.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Weebs is just I say this every time this comes up, but they're punching way above their weight class. They're such a small team, but they're putting out a product that is so refined with cards that are better than most cards on the market in terms of like product quality, design, graphic design, foil techniques, everything. I mean,
the foils are so good.
The foils are, I've never seen anything better.
Yeah. And Omnidecks, straight up, that puts so many, I'm sure, David, that puts so many tournament softwares to shame. It's amazing.
I think you should be able to submit your deck list through Omnidecks for the regional as well.
Yes.
It just makes it like one less hurdle to attend.
We got to do that at Nationals. It was so slick. The morning of, we just popped it in there. Like we're done. We're registered.
Yeah, I saw that option appear on our regionals listing on the Omnideck. So that's great.
Yeah,
it's going to be easy for me. That's for sure.
Yeah. They had the stats up like right away. We didn't have to wait. I mean, I think there was just a short delay because there was at Nationals, there was a little quirk where like some sideboards were disappearing and people had to go double check their sideboards were incorrectly. But I think Nationals started maybe 15 or 20 minutes late or something, and then was just off to smooth sailing after that. And like, that's for a 163 player event like that, is was pretty good, especially when you look at some other card games and how late they. I'm not going to name any names, but some of our TCG wider TCG knowledgeable listeners will know exactly what I'm talking about from the past month or two. All right, well, David, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And please, once again, I'll have links down in the description to the Banish Zone's website where you can go register for the event. Go ahead and hit up the Banish Zone on April 27th for their excellent 1K plus regional. You're not going to want to miss that event.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, David.
All right. Well, speaking of nationals, Taylor, that's kind of the other topic today, isn't it? We're gonna finally, it was like 2 days ago. We're gonna recap. We're gonna recap finally, after all this time, we're gonna recap our nationals experience. And before we do that, of course, as you know, we have to really quickly just do our ad read. We have to talk about our wonderful sponsor of our podcast, which is you all. Thank you all so much for supporting our podcast. If you want to know how you can support us, if you haven't been doing some of these things yet, you're always welcome to start. It's never a better time than right now to start liking the video, to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening to the podcast on. Comment, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. Greatly appreciated. Helps support the podcast and support our continued growth. And if you want to support us financially, but you don't want to spend any money, because honestly, who does? You can go to tcgplayer.com and shop for your singles using our affiliate link. So actually don't go to tcgplayer.com. That's the wrong thing to say. Go to bit.ly/shoptcgs or click on our TCG Player affiliate link down in the description below. You can buy all your awesome Grand Archive and other TCG singles at the hot prices on TCG Player and give us just a small kickback. Costs nothing extra to you if you use our affiliate link. So thank you so much for your support in both those ways. Now, Taylor, Nationals.
What an event that was. It was fantastic. Yeah, we had a great time down there. I think we went down with 5 of the main deck team members. And we spent some time hanging out with Steve as well on Friday. It was a really good time. Kind of backing up a bit too, like again, we went down like a day early to start our trip off, just because it's kind of cool. Like with Corbin out in Pennsylvania, we've got some other team members out in other areas as well that aren't located with us. It's nice just to get down there a day early and just spend the day kind of like testing decks and stuff with everybody. And so yeah, beginning of our trip, we got down there Thursday. We got there actually around noon, which was great. Ubered to the hotel, had a really good time. Got checked in, went and had some food, and then the few of us that were already there just kind of sat down and started grinding out games again right away, trying to figure out what were some of the last slots on our list we wanted to shore up. I might be jumping ahead a little bit too much here because we'd kind of done some prep beforehand as well. How far back do you want to go, Dan? I suppose
that's a good question. So nationals, of course, this was a very big event that you and I had been. We'd all been looking forward to this for the last year, basically, since the very first store championship, where we started to accumulate these invites, and we started planning. Okay, who's going to go to nationals? Who needs to get invites? What are all our opportunities to make sure everyone on the team who wants to go is going to have that invite to nationals. We obviously don't have to go quite that far back, but that's just really to express that how much this was on our mind to be ready to play test for, because of course at nationals, the top 8 got invites to the coveted 16-player world championship event. 8 players from North America, 4 players from Oceania, and 4 players from Southeast Asia are all going to get invited to Worlds this year, with hopefully an expanding roster next year into other areas of the world as the game continues its slow and steady growth pattern. So when it came to, I think, starting a couple of months ago, maybe it was, I think it was really after Ontario. That was it. It was after Ontario was when I think national prep really began for us, because Ontario was our first look at the ALC meta in general. And at that point, it became like, once we saw what was effective, what were people gravitating towards, then we were more able to look at, all right, what should we? Are there any of those decks we should be playing? Are there ways to beat the decks that we expect to be popular? And a huge shout out just on the main deck team in general, to Taylor. You and Ash were on the main deck team. Also, were the two that I saw the most, kind of the most chatter and grinding and throwing ideas around in our competitive Discord. I unfortunately I've been busy the first chunk of this year with an insane amount of content and opportunities. As we talked about, I was unable to go to Ontario because of the Star Wars Unlimited thing, and I had to go to an Altered thing, and I had to produce a how to play video, and I've just been like grinding.
You've been on that grind, big time. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I was not able to contribute as much as I would have liked. I did whenever I could to the competitive team, and our just kind of focus testing. But at the end of the day, Taylor, why don't you talk a little bit about kind of where we landed and where our testing was, and then what happened the weekend up.
First, thanks for taking the time to explain nationals as well. I was ready to just jump in. I'm still like just really excited about from the whole weekend. It was a really fun time. So leading up to the event, we had come up with a couple different lists. We had started with like a water Diana list that we were pretty excited about. It wasn't like the allies list. It wasn't quite like all in on getting to 3 and shooting with Shadow's Twinner either. It was kind of like a weird mid-range list that was trying to really take advantage of Frostwarren Paladin and then also Crystalline Archer and their ability to just eat floating memory for value. Especially the Crystalline Archer just comes in and every turn, like it can attack, eat floating memory, get +3 power to hit for 4, and then draw you a card. So just really powerful card.
I want to say that list. So we didn't end up playing this list, but it was one of our front runners. And I think what I enjoyed about the list that we had ended up kind of tweaking that to was that those Crystalline Archers really, to me, acted like additional Scepter of Lumina hits, where it was a deck built around sort of dealing 4 to 5 damage at a time, in a bunch of different chunks. So it was if you got your Scepter of Lumina to stick, you could Dungeon Guide up and like ping, ping, ping as you went up. If you got it down to Crystalline, it was another boom 4 damage swing. If you got to Diana, it was a boom like 5 damage shot, a 7 damage shot. It just sort of like would chunk the opponent out a little bit because it was playing Diana. It could go pretty low on cards and still shoot. You were able to because we had that focus on bullets, you were able to sort of take that Dungeon Guide route and still play the game afterwards. But I think we found that some of its matchups were just a little shakier than we wanted.
Yeah. I mean, they were, it's not even just that they were shaky. It's like just playing, I think, water in that meta was really, really volatile in general, especially playing Diana, since she doesn't have a ton of defense. But like Scepter of Illumina just makes like water mirrors kind of just really coin flippy. Whoever can kind of like stick Scepter and keep it on the board and level up efficiently is going to have a really good game, and the other player is probably not going to have a really good game. So it just felt a lot like we were putting too much up to kind of who drew Fracture Eyes and who didn't. We had been working on that for about a week and a half, I think. A week and a half before the weekend before Nats. So like about 2.5 weeks before that, before Nationals. And so then that weekend, I started looking at like a Wind list because Wind had been pretty underrepresented in the meta at that point, but it just looked like there was a lot of really powerful Wind cards to play. So I put together this weird like Wind Infusion Lorraine build that was probably not what we wanted to play, especially like for that Crux Talk bend, but it was playing a lot of really good Wind cards that were actually something I really was actively wanting to play. Cards like Wind Cutter seemed really good in the meta. Cards like Reclaim and Zephyr are awesome. Dream Fairy is still spectacular in the meta, and then you get to play things like Veiling Breeze, which is a halfway decent tech card against Erupting. And then you still just get like to beat down a lot. Wind has a lot of really good allies, obviously, and you don't even have to play like the 3 or the 2/3 for 3 allies. You can place things like Banner Knight and Captain to buff your team, and we'll get to that later because those weren't unfortunately in our list at the moment. But anyway, that was kind of just the starting point, and from there we kind of morphed it into this Wind Merlin hybrid list that looked to kind of just control the game for a bunch of turns until it could land Majestic Spirit and win through with that for by beating for 4 for a few turns. And that's kind of what we landed on as we were, packing up and getting ready to board our flight down to Houston. And that was a pretty neat deck. It was, I think we had a really good ally matchup with it. It was pretty cold to things like Luxem and Erupting that weren't attacking through the board, and we're trying to win through other methods, or I should say through the battlefield. And we're trying to win through other methods, like either hitting you with a giant fireball or a huge Lightweaver's Assault or something. Yeah, so we took that down, and that was kind of what a lot of us were planning on playing that weekend. And we got down to Houston, started testing out games. Thursday things were looking really cool, and Friday things kind of slowly but surely went off track a bit. We spent a lot of time trying to shore up the Erupting and Luxem matchups when we likely should have just accepted the losses there and tried to take our strong ally matchup and let that bring us into day 2 and top 8.
Well, here's the thing. This is, I think, more so than anything else, a cautionary tale for people in their preparation for events. And if you can take anything away from this, I want you just to take away what our experience was like, and use it just to kind of check yourself as you're doing your testing. So when on that Friday, we began the day just talking a little bit about, okay, like each of us kind of brought a different matchup down, at least one other deck that we could throw against this. I brought a hybrid Erupting deck. We had a Luxem Xander deck there. We had a Fire Jimmy's Fire Tony combo deck there. We had a Water Ally deck. We had just a pile of different decks like that that we were just kind of gauntleting against it. We had the absolute pleasure of getting to hang out with Steve that day as well. Steve was coming down and had I think he won't mind me telling this story, but he had Erupting and he had Luxem. And he wasn't sure what he wanted to play. So he said, hey, while we're hanging out and testing against your deck, do you mind just running a few of these matchups against me? I kind of want to test the Luxem out against Erupting and just see, how bad is the matchup? What kind of sideboard do I want to take and everything?
And of course we let Dan play Erupting against him, which is really where the problem lies, I think.
Yeah.
As soon as you start suggesting Erupting anything around Dan, he kind of just he tunnels in on it and is like, yeah, let's go.
Okay, well, I was pretty on board with the Wind deck, but I certainly played a lot of Erupting that day. And so I played a good chunk of this Erupting against Steve's Luxem, and we had a few back and forth games. I will go on the record and say that I think Steve is a stronger Erupting player than I am. But he's also a massively stronger Luxem player than I am. So it was certainly right for him to be playing the Luxem side of the matchup. But as I was playing and kind of like regaining my sea legs, as it were, for the Erupting match, or maybe lava legs or something, I was getting used to Erupting again and doing the math. Eventually I kind of started to feel, man, like I forgot just how good it feels to just draw Erupting and win, and just just do all the math, count the damage, and oops, you didn't put out your Lantern in time, or I dealt with it or whatever. So I was feeling that, but I still thought, despite that, this Wind deck's cool. But then I started playing some Erupting against the Wind list and everything, and it was like, yeah, this matchup is still tough, right? And how many Eruptings? Steve over here is looking at either playing Luxem or Erupting, and those are 2 bad matchups for us. And this is the point, dear audience, where things went off the rails because we started to tunnel in on these 2 matchups, as Taylor mentioned, and we thought, hey, you know what? To be fair, Luxem was fairly highly represented compared to what we expected.
It's very highly represented. Yes. Yep.
And the conversion rate for Luxem was really strong at Nationals. Luxem was clearly poised well in the metagame.
Mm-hmm.
And it was absolutely correct to think about Luxem as a problem. What was less highly represented was Erupting. And what was definitely wrong was starting to take our core list and make these changes to attempt to shore up those matchups in both the main and sideboard for those two matchups where, like, I'll say that I think I think teching for Luxem was good in retrospect. Teching for Erupting was maybe where we should have taken a loss, but the Luxem match, even with our tech, was really, really difficult.
The Luxem matchup was, I think, kind of always going to be horrendous with that deck, unfortunately. I think on the way back, we'll get into this maybe a little more with some lessons learned kind of at the end of the podcast. But I think you had described our win list as kind of like mono white life game, to borrow a term from Magic, where it did a lot of things to not lose the game, but it never actually closed it out very well. And it's just kind of one of the pitfalls of only having like Majestic Spirit as your win con, right? Like there was some other things. We had a few like Ace and Protectors in there at one point.
We had Ghosts of Pendragon.
Pendragon obviously is like fantastic, but still just like not a lot of ways to actually end the game in a timely manner. So against a deck like Luxem that is only inevitability essentially, right? It's just counting down the turns until it can hit you with some giant Lightweaver's assaults while also revealing more Lightweaver's assaults. It's not going to be a good time for you. And they've got like Excalibur for your Majestic Spirit as well. They've lots of answers there. So it was just not a good good matchup at all. So we spent a lot of that afternoon on Friday just teching for that and teching for Erupting and trying to figure out the answers. And like we had started putting like Morgan's Soul Guide in our list to stop Luxem site healing, and we started like trying to figure out how we could find more Academy guides so we could like more efficiently level up to 3 and match their level up to 3. And it was getting pretty wild.
It was the moment, we talked about this on the way home too. It was the moment where we were thinking, okay, Academy guides, that's the solution. That's when we were off the track at that point. Like it was kind of irreparable at that point. And what really happened was we got to the end of the day. This is what sucks. It was like maybe around 10 p.m. or something.
It was like 10 p.m. because we had just gotten back from dinner, and we went to dinner pretty late as well. Like we didn't go until about 8:30 or so, I think.
We got to this 10 p.m. stage where I just said, like, I'm concerned about what's happened to our ally matchup. Run this deck against. I'll play some water allies. Run this deck against me, and we had, I think it was a 5-2 sweep or something. It was all things said and done after I swapped out and someone else swapped in and deck swapped around.
Yeah, I think you played our list into me playing water allies, and you lost all 4 games in a row. And then I think you and I swapped, you swapped out for Mitch. Mitch took the water list, I took the wind list, and I think I don't know if I picked up 2 games. I picked up 2 games because between that as well, we had undone some of our changes just to try and fix the mess we had made. And it's still like they weren't very like commanding games. They weren't very convincing wins necessarily.
Right. And so we realized that we had made an error here. Mm-hmm. And the list was a little too far gone. And so our options at that point were, do we attempt to fix it with minimal testing, or do we just audible to something that we are feeling confident with? And there, as Taylor mentioned, there was where the problem was, that I had been playing Erupting all day long. And I was like, well, I have Erupting with me. I like Erupting. I feel good about Erupting. I've been doing the math all day. And eventually I just kind of made the call, like, I can't do the win list. I'm just going to take Erupting.
Mm-hmm. No, and thankfully, like, a lot of us had Erupting. Ash drove down, and he was gracious enough to bring like his whole collection essentially, because he just had it in some really nice like 5-row long boxes or whatever. So that was like, we were just hashtag blessed to have Ash on the trip with us for sure. Not only like to help us with these lists, but also just like being a homie to lend out some cards as well. So we were able to put an erupting list together for Mitch because he was also on that plan of like jumping ship. And I was also on that plan at that point too. Like I had brought erupting down with me, and I was just like, yeah, we just don't have. It was like 11:30 at night or so when we had made this decision, and we just did not have time to test the changes, like to undo our list, because we were also trying to like just get our list back to the point where it beat allies. And I think we had mostly got there. But we just did not have the time to validate that was the case, right? Just jam a couple games and make sure we had undone the screw ups effectively. And so I was at that point as well to jump ship, and then I brought up the timestamps just because like this whole situation is just so like comical at this point where it's 11:30. I'm like, okay, guys, we try. I think we fixed like our ally matchup. I was posting this in our like kind of our team server here. I was like, we add in stuff for the allies matchup. I think we cooked too much today, but I think we might be back to what's good. And the thing that just like really set me off is just Corbin messages at 11:33. Cool, I'm heading to bed. We'll see the finalist in the morning. Emoji Snug Merlin. And within I guess within like 2 minutes, I ping him back, like an actual just Discord ping, like hoping he didn't turn his notifications off or something. 11:35. I'm like, people, mostly Dan, are talking about how to link to a different list, just FYI, just so you don't wake up to this info. And I never heard back.
Yep.
Oh, it was crushing. But anyway, Corbin stayed the course. We posted our changes so he could pick them up. Ash also stayed the course actually, and him and Corbin made a couple small changes to like where we had fixed our list to. And I think they both were paid off for it for the most part.
I think Corbin adjusted mostly in the direction we were discussing. Mm-hmm. Ash sort of pulled back and said, like we had cooked a little into our realm of comfort, and Ash wanted to uncook back mm-hmm. to where he was comfortable with when he won his store championships with Win Merlin.
Yes. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And that was actually, that was where this whole list kind of began too. It was like, he'd been talking this up for a long time, and then you had ended up kind of making your own version, and then we compared notes and everything. So on the day of nationals, then what we ultimately had for the main deck team members represented there, we had myself, who audibled to Erupting at 11:30 the previous night, Taylor, who 11:35 audible to Erupting, Mitch, who 11:35 audible to Erupting, Ash, who basically just kind of played his store champs list with some adjustments, basically saying, well, all that testing was cool, but I think I know what I like here, and I'm just going to stick with it. And then Corbin, who just had gone to bed the previous night, woke up the next morning to his entire team abandoning him, and just went, well, I don't know, it's probably fine, and just took the list in anyway.
Well, and Dustin was with as well, and he also hopped to his traditional Wind Allies list too.
Yeah, you're right. Dustin was there as well. So it's actually 6. So I was led astray by our miscounting earlier. But Dustin, Dustin and his wife Riley were both playing as well, and Dustin was going to go with whatever list we had gone with, and then said, "Well, yeah, it's fine. I guess if everyone's jumping ship, I'll just play my good old Wind Allies." Mm-hmm. So ultimately, what happened was we all entered nationals, and so myself and Mitch. Okay, go ahead.
They just even like it's like 11:30. We all switch, and then we realize we need to get a list together, like the actual physical cards together for Mitch, because he doesn't have Erupting with him. So we're over at Ash's room at like midnight or so, and trying to like just furiously digging through his collection of cards.
Rooting through his collection for like.
Just to find all those staples for it and stuff.
My favorite was like we had figured out that after Crystal of Empowerment was banned, Harp was the obvious like next choice. Mm-hmm. So, but nobody had a Harp with them but me. I didn't even have it with me. Actually, I'm trying to think. Well, whatever. We had a Harp somewhere mm-hmm. amongst our collection. There was one Harp, and then we went, well, okay, but if more people are going to Erupting, I think we should all be playing Harp. And then we're like, the biggest thing, we're just furiously like digging through Ash's collection, like, who the hell brings like 1 million harps anywhere? And like, we need to find 2 more harps. Where are the harps? So yeah, I was like just digging through boxes, and it was like a Hell's Kitchen kind of thing.
It was like Hell's Kitchen.
Which, by the way,
the best way to put it, actually, like that, it just describes so well the complete and just total overcooking we did on Friday too.
Yeah, true.
I think Ramsey would have been appalled.
Someone needs to be a Gordon Ramsay of the TCG world and make a Hell's Kitchen of deck building. I think that would be really fun to watch.
100%.
So now can I go to Nationals? All right,
definitely.
So we all get entered into the event. Nationals, as we mentioned earlier, very smooth event. Omnidecks just killing it. Finding your matchups each round, super easy. Got everything reported, got to just like submit our deck lists on there. When we got to top 32, the deck list just got posted on Omnidecks, which was like so cool that you just pulled it up on your phone. Like, oh, like, let's look at everyone's deck lists.
Yep. You go look at like the rankings for Swiss, and next to each player, they've got a little, it looks like a little list icon. And if it's purple, you can click on it to view the deck list. And if it's gray, it means that it's disabled and hidden because they were only displaying deck lists for like Top Cut. So
yeah,
it's very neat, very cool. Go check it out.
Well, when we finally entered in the event and got to playing out our rounds, at the end of day one, it was very tight for some of us. Mitch made it in cleanly. Mitch was the clean cut. I think he ended up in 19th place or something day one. But for a few of us, we were right on the bubble. And it was myself and Corbin who had basically identical scores at that point. And they were scores that were like, well, in a normal scenario, these shouldn't make it in. But there were a lot of draws that happened that day. Partially because I think players, especially with like Luxem Xander lists, are just still getting used to how to play those decks a little in a timely way, I guess we could say.
And yeah, opponents as well are also getting used to playing against them in a timely way too. It's not always clear like what you should be doing into that deck. So if you don't have a lot of experience with that matchup, it's pretty easy to kind of get stuck figuring out what your decision tree is. Absolutely.
And we are standing around basically waiting for sort of the final announcement to take place. And I had completely written it off. Basically, I thought, well, I mean, like, I've bubbled out before and I'll bubble out again. It's not going to change here. Mm-hmm. And we get the final announcement, and I was just at the desk, like chatting with Alan or something. And then one of you guys comes up to me and says, Dan, you're in. And I'm like, 32nd place is what I took. I pull it up and I look, I'm like, wow, 32nd. And then I scroll down one more, and 33rd Corbin. It's like, no, Corbin, why?
It was so unfortunate because Corbin was playing really well that day. He was just killing it. Everybody was excited because like he was getting rewarded for staying the course too. Like I felt really guilty especially about like jumping ship, because him and I had played a lot of games that last week leading up to the event. And actually the 2 weeks before with our water list as well. And we had really put in a lot of reps together. And I just felt bad. Like I felt almost like I was just leaving him to the wolves when I jumped to Erupting. So I felt really good that he was playing well and doing well with the list. And then, Karma unfortunately did not deliver. And Dan was the one at 32nd and Corbin was the one at 30th. But overall, just like really, really excellent performance at Nationals, I would say, by the team in general. Like you and Mitch both top 32. Corbin was just like on the bubble, unfortunately, but just that's an excellent record still. Played really well. I went 4-3 and ended up in the like 50s somewhere.
You were in the running for a long time, though. It was just at the end that things kind of went south. Yes. Ash also was doing well for a lot of the day. Had a couple unfortunate draws that kind of ended up not panning out.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And then I think Dustin started off like pretty strong, and then unfortunately I think like after round 3, like he had some rough matchups and ended up not finishing out the day super strong. But I think he can be pretty proud of his results as well, or at least his performance. And all of it was just really exciting to see. And of course, we skipped over what might be the most exciting part of the whole tournament, which was the round 1 feature match. I don't know how we skipped past this.
I'm sorry. It was my fault. My own ego. I wanted to talk about Top Cut.
Classic
but,
Dan.
Yeah, classic me. But we had an incredible feature match, round 1, with Maindeck Taylor versus Lee, right?
Lee.
Was the player?
Yeah. And it was really cool because he was one of the judges at Ontario as well. So we met each other there, and we're really friendly with each other, and it was great. So it just made for like a really, really calm, like fun, friendly atmosphere going into the feature match. Because I think a lot of players don't really want to necessarily get on the feature match in the first round. It just is like, it's just like an added, you're already kind of got like the tournament day jitters and stuff, and that's just another added layer of stress that you are thinking about and worrying about now. So it was really nice to be able to sit across from him and already know him and be friendly with each other and stuff, and not have to worry about like really getting all super serious and hunkering down and stuff. It was a lot more. I mean, we still wanted to win and play well, but it wasn't like cutthroat. So it felt really good. And then Keith was there as well. He was he was our table judge, and he was head judge at Ontario. So it was just like a fun like Judge Thunderdome almost. It was sweet, but anyway, it was just a wild first round. And I'm not. If you want to go watch it, pause the podcast right now and go to YouTube. Go find the stream. The match starts at the 30-minute mark.
I'll have a link in the description. It'll be easy.
But this is your last chance to avoid spoilers, in case you want to see what's going on.
It is pretty fun to watch. It's worth watching.
Yep. But we sit down and we're getting ready, and we're just waiting for like time to get started and stuff. So we're chatting, and he mentions he thinks he has the most unique list in the tournament. And I was like, oh, okay,
he's right.
He's 100% right. But that gets my wheels turning. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I wonder what this could be. Like, is this something I have to worry about as like an interrupting player who's trying to just like combo off really quickly and get everything set up? Like what kind of weirdness does he have in store that's going to stop me from doing that? And we get going, and he throws down a Spirit of Fire, and I'm a little concerned at that point because I still don't know what the heck is going on. And I get my opening 7, and I'm I guess 8 with turn card, and I see that I have a Creative Shock in hand, so I'm like, okay, cool. I can use this and find some floating memory and get my things going or whatever. And then turn 1 he levels up into Xander, or turn 2 he levels up into Xander, and I was like, all right, what is this? What is going on here? And I still, maybe at that point I should have put unique and what he had in store for me together, but I was not in the point of frame of mind to put 2 and 2 together at that point. And so I keep playing my game out. And we're having like a pretty good matchup. He levels up to Xander 2 at some point. I'm not really finding what I need to combo off. I had made like a mistake earlier as well with leveling, because I was still kind of rusty with erupting. Like I hadn't played it since our store championship, I think. And we played like 3 like sleep deprived games the night before just to like
That's plenty.
Prepare again. So like I didn't realize until like halfway through the match, like, oh, I had a fiery momentum. I definitely should not have leveled to Rye on like turn 2. I should have just like stayed Spirit or something instead. But anyway, we're playing this out, and he eventually levels up to Xander 3, or no, when he levels up to Xander 2, I think it is, he banishes Trisket for his cost to level up. And that's when I finally put it all together.
Oh no,
there were some shenanigans going on, and unfortunately, I hadn't found any other pieces to win the game yet. Like I was just churning through my deck turn after turn. Eventually he gets up to like Xander 3. He's the Spell Shroud Stealth Xander. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of my chance. I'm on Merlin level 3 at this point. I can hit him with Sword of Seeking and Fiery Momentum for a good chunk of damage, and then just like fireball him out on his Recollection or something. And unfortunately, he Excaliburs my Sword of Seeking in response or during the attack. So it gets fizzled by stealth at that point. And I'm like, okay, this is fine. We can play through this. And then on his turn, he goes Trisket. And I'm like, oh, okay, it begins. And the next couple of turns, he goes and like Excalibur's things on my turn, and now the class bonus is enabled, so I'm not actually able to play anything in my hand, and I'm just kind of like stuck there. I was stuck there waiting for him to kill me, and he eventually finds like an Erendite. And at this point, I'm still like pretty like flabbergasted about the whole situation, just because like this is like probably the coolest thing that's going to happen at the tournament all day. Like nobody else is playing a Trisket except for Lee. Like this is the coolest thing. And he plays an Erendite, and I don't think I had a response anyway, but I started counting floating memory in his graveyard regardless, and he just had one. I was like, okay, well, it's just gonna be an Erendite for one. It's not a big deal. And he like played a Fractured Crown, I think the turn before. And he like didn't have any unique allies in the yard, so I was like, okay, that's fine, like not a big deal. And then I had seen a Rending Flames earlier in the game, so I just should have realized, oh, there's a Rending Flames on top of this Erendite, even if it's small, and even with the Fractured Crown bonus, it's that's going to add up. And then that turn he also Rending Flames me for the game, and it ended up being a Rending Flames for like 20, I think, because Trisket's got inherent power as well. So it was a really, really fun game and a really, really great way to start off the day. Even though it was a loss, it was just a lot of fun to be part of that. I think it was like a surprisingly grindy game. So I think we only had like 20 minutes left for game 2, and just didn't like finish it off by the time time was called. But it was super fun. It was awesome to play against Lee in the first round, and it was really cool to just get kind of dunked on stream like that for, let Trisket be a hero for the day and see what was going on. So yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah, we made sure to do our part in all of our feature matches. Both not only did Main Deck Taylor get feature match, but Main Deck Mitch did later on, and I did on day 2. And Erupting lost for us each time. So we were doing our best to show the community that it is maybe not, it's maybe okay. It's not always just going to win games. Certainly not going to say we played perfectly. As far as my day 2 match, if we don't mind jumping to that, day 2, yep. Day 2 began, and I was paired up with another high profile player who had just snuck in on tiebreakers, True Champion Isaac, who Isaac is just such an incredibly nice guy. Holy cow. Like I had just so much fun chatting with him and seeing him. He's always so smiley and he's just fun to talk to. And Isaac and I sat down for our feature match. Having had the deck list released, I knew exactly what I was getting into, to the point where the previous night, Taylor, we put together True Champions list and played a few times, and it was like, I just gotta I have to see what this deck is, if there's anything weird about this that I need to look out for. I felt pretty decent about the match, playing it a few times. Of course, it wasn't True Champion playing it, so we were, I'm sure, missing lines and playing things suboptimally.
Well, and that was, I hadn't played any reps with that deck before, and that's a pretty unique deck, as far as those go, right? So, there's just some nuances to learn, that you don't necessarily get from looking at the list right away. So I definitely was not playing it as well as like Caben and Isaac and Terry were the day before.
Right. Go ahead.
I was just, so you, I think we played like 2 or 3 games and you won all of them like fairly handily, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that it was representative of how that matchup goes at all.
No, it wasn't. So when they were playing a Win Lorraine list, which was I think actually the Weaves team also called it like the Win starter deck, because it's what it was. It was just a refined version of the kind of win list that you would get if you just like took the starter deck and you knew what you were doing and made the cards better. And had a few slightly different card choices, but a big thing like Rally the Peasants showing up, being like, actually, when we started looking through this, we're like, oh, this is what if Rally the Peasants just could get you the best cards in the game the exact time that you want them. That's what this list is. You want Ghosts, you get Ghosts. You want Dungeon Guide, you get Dungeon Guide. You want Academy Guide, you get Academy Guide. You want Phalanx Captain, you get Phalanx Captain. Banner Knight, you get Banner Knight. So like, it's
speaking of Academy Guide, this is pretty funny because like the night before we were looking for Academy Guides for a win list, and we're messaging like anybody we can think of who might have brought Academy Guides, and then I think Corbin had talked to like Caben or Isaac previously, was just sent out a message asking, right? And they said no, we don't have any extras with, unfortunately, and it makes sense because they were all playing 4 of Academy guides in their list. So
it was actually me who ended up messaging Caben. I'm like, okay. Caben, I know you got lots of stuff. You got some Academy guides extra, and he's like, Caben tells me, which is like probably true. It's one of those things that's like true, but also maybe belying a truth, also a real truth. He says, I wanted to just focus on the tournament. I didn't bring all my extra stuff this time. And like, yeah, that's true. He probably, but also I don't think those Academy guides were included in their extra stuff because every one of their lists had 4 of Academy guide in it also, which is really funny.
It made me feel a lot better about our list and like trying to throw Academy guides in it.
Yeah.
Like, kind of felt like we were on the right path there.
Like I felt at the time, I told him back like after a few minutes later, after we were like kind of moving around, I was like, no, that's no big deal. We're kind of like memeing with it anyway, I think at this point, because I felt like we were just getting a little too in the weeds. But like, then seeing him perform, like, oh man, we were actually getting a little close to something here. So in that day 2 first feature match, someone on the staff called it the Clash of the Titans. Like, I don't know, but that like two content creators who are pretty well known in the Grand Archive space getting to go against each other round 1, who both bubbled in barely into day 2 is like, that was a really cool feature match. We'll have the link for that down in the description below as well if you want to watch that out. Again, I'm going to spoil everything, so go ahead and pause it and go watch if you want to before I keep talking.
Spoiler alert, though, there's no Triscuits involved. So.
There are no Triscuits involved. There is cheating involved, but not intentional cheating.
Well, it's not cheating if it's not intentional.
You always tell me to lead with that, but it's more fun to say that it's cheating. It's unintentional cheating. So what ends up happening is we have a match that's very different than when Taylor and I tested the previous night because one, Isaac is good at the deck and you just had literally just threw it together and shuffled it up. And Isaac's, I'm sure, played like 100+ games with this easily. But two, my erupting deck which was performing pretty admirably day 1. My goodness, it just decided on day 2 to not ever give me anything. You can watch this match, especially game 2 of this match, where I am just grinding. I am just like trying my hardest to stall as much as possible. Basically pulling out all the stops. I'm ember songing things on board. I'm putting out blockers and letting them sit and just come on, just like give me one more turn. Because I was able to connect eventually. I was able to like double spurn the Quicksilver Grail into the Nullifying Lantern. After getting him to kind of spend a Zephyr on a harp that like I just to try and get all sorts of means of protection out of the way so I can clear the way. I land a Fiery Momentum for 20, and apparently the casters were like pretty impressed with that. Because Fiery Momentum for 20 it's a lot of damage.
That's a lot of cards in graveyard.
Yeah, that's how late it had gone. I had certainly seen about half my deck at that point, and I had seen 0 Erupting Rhapsodies and only the 1 Fiery Momentum and some Fireballs late, I think. But I had already had to go to Lorraine, and I wasn't able to get the levels to get the Fireball off. I didn't want to level higher in that matchup because if I went too down on cards, I would have no protection. And I knew what that deck could do was dump Phalanx Captains and Banner Knights and just kill me if I ever let the board get just a little too out of control. So it was a tough matchup of just trying to survive because I knew that I cleared the way. All I had to do was see 1 Erupting Rhapsody or 1 more Fiery Momentum, and I was going to be able to secure it. And I get to one point, a critical mistake happens when I had put my cards down through this. It was a complicated turn of playing a few different things. I put my cards down and I ended up discarding an Ember Song, I think to like a hasty swing or something, thinking that I still had 1 more in my memory. Because the game had just gone so late and so many things had happened. I had lost track of the fact that I had used it earlier to burn something. and then, or maybe it was the other order. I pitched one and then I used it to burn something. But the point was, I thought I had an Ember Song. I go for a Creative Shock, and I look at my memory and I go, oh, I guess that was my last Ember Song. That's too bad. I draw my 2 off of Creative Shock, and it's Ember Song and Erupting Rhapsody. And at this point, I definitely wait for. I'm like stalled for a little bit. Like my hand is in my head. I'm like, okay, I definitely threw something away here that I shouldn't have, because this should be an easy slam dunk. Take the Rhapsody and just use the Ember Song that I've clearly protected this whole time to be able to combo with. Except I had thrown it away. So I'm like, it's one of those situations where you don't want to make a decision because you know that you screwed up and you just kind of want to rewind time or just shuffle the deck up and walk away or something. But eventually I just go, okay, like the obvious thing here then is I have to discard this Erupting Rhapsody because there's only 1 Ember Song left in the deck, but there are 3 more Erupting Rhapsodies. I probably will have 1 more turn at least to, again, try and find another Rhapsody. I've gone through so much of the deck. I'm sure it'll happen. And I believe the cheat is shortly after that, when Isaac has me so close to dead and goes for, he draws and goes for an Ascension, getting his Prismatic Edge into play, burning me for 3, getting me really close to death, and then goes for a swing with Lorraine with the Prismatic Edge. He tells me afterwards too, actually at the time too, he made a mistake. He could have waited to see what he drew off of the turn before he did any swinging, because he actually would have had another Ascension and could have just burned me out. But he goes for the swing, and I play Resolute Stand out of my hand, paying no cost, because that's a thing you can do with Resolute Stand when you're level 2, not when you're level 0. So, I do that just because it's just it was one of those heat of the moment things where like he draws the thing and he slams it down and he attacks, and I slam down my answer, but I fail to realize, again, just because we're so deep in the game, such a climactic turn that I just don't put together. No, wait, I didn't get to level 2. I was at level 0 from using some innervates, and I'm unable to use this for free. The next turn, I skip my draw because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do when I am able to play Resolute Stand for free. I play all of my cards to dig everything in my hand. The very last card that I draw was Fiery Momentum. And and at the time I was thinking, if this had just been a draw sooner, I could have had this. I could have had the game. And then Isaac just beats me up. Wins the game next turn. I had nothing left. I expended everything just trying to find a way to win the game. I was out of ways to stop him anyway. Ascension just killed me. There was nothing left. And then one of the judges walks in as soon as the match is over and says, "You played Resolute Stand for free on Spirit." And I'm like, you are right, I did. Isaac's like, "Oh yeah, you did." And then our table judge is like, "Yeah, you did." None of us noticed, because it was just, we were, as I like to say, as Bushiroad likes to say, we were experiencing the heat of card games.
Exactly. I don't think the commentators, did the commentators notice it as well? I didn't have a chance to watch it live, unfortunately.
So the commentators told me later that because my deck was in black sleeves, they weren't able to cleanly tell what I had put down. So they assumed that I was on the level and playing things correctly and had paid the cost for it. Which then I didn't draw a card on the next turn, might have tipped them off. I'm not sure, but I'm certain, because I know I know the general entity of chat in any streaming situation. Chat knew, guaranteed, that I had inadvertently cheated on that play. But the wonderful news, and the thing that made me feel, I would have felt terrible. I would have felt terrible and just straight conceded if that had caused me to win. That would not have been cool. I would have just said, okay, you know what, Isaac, you got it, as soon as anyone let me know. I'm sure the judges were waiting to see what happened in that match to pop in or something. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, Isaac actually won. I did not deserve to live through that swing, and so it was kind of a no harm, no foul kind of situation, which is perfect for when you screw up like that.
Wait, also, I think, did you play both Isaac and Caben on stream?
I didn't play Caban ever.
Oh, okay. It was only. Oh, yeah. It was just Isaac. Okay. Sorry, I misheard earlier. Then I was like, he's blending two matches together. This is wild.
No. That was all Isaac. All Isaac.
Okay.
So Isaac got the win, which was awesome, well deserved. But I had started my day off with my deck not cooperating, and the next round it was exactly the same for me. It's like this erupting just not giving me anything. At that point, I'm on the final table of top 32. I'm like, this is the problem with playing a volatile combo deck like this. I get a bye because someone had left on round 3, and then round 4 I end up against Pickle Sword. And Pickle Sword looks at me, a dude just looks dead, like straight up, like he had been up for 3 days straight or something. And he just goes, Dan, it'd be really fun to play, but like I am just dead. And do you just want to ID with me? And like we'll just, you can go, just do whatever. And I'm like, that sounds fine, man. Like my deck hates me today anyway. I don't care. It's no big deal. So that was my very, very anticlimactic day 2. But with an incredibly fun feature match against Isaac, which I really appreciated. At least I had a great time with that.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. It was very cool. I think Mitch's day 2 was also somewhat anticlimactic, and he got a round 1 win, I think, or around, I guess, 8 win, didn't he? Or I forget exactly how his record went.
He got a win in there. He got at least one, but
I think he started the day off strong with a win.
I think that's right
to see. But yeah, I didn't actually pay that too much attention to what you guys were doing. I was trying to keep up with your records as the day went on, but I was also playing in the regional that day, and that was a ton of fun. And I picked up the TCG list we had sleeved up already from playing the night before, so I was like, yeah, I'll just play this again. And see what this, not again, but I'll see what this is like for real now that I'm awake and kind of can figure some of this stuff out.
It's a deck that's up your alley too. Like when we put this together, we were like, this is a Taylor deck. This is what Taylor should be playing.
Yep. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. I started round 1 against Erupting, which was neat because I somehow figured out like how to play against that deck. Between the sleep deprived games and just kind of thinking about it and playing a practice game against Corbin before the tournament started, and then it was just it was a lot of grinding from there. I think I ended up at 403 in the tournament, which was just enough to give me the same amount of points as the 5-2s that top 16, but worse breakers, and so I bubbled out, unfortunately. But it was really cool. I ending the day undefeated technically, so that was sweet.
No losses.
You mentioned earlier about how like that's I think how my elo got so high is there was no losses to take any elo away.
Correct.
So that's kind of sick, actually, a fun little side effect of that. But that was awesome. We had a very, very tense match against a player named Kokoa in the final round for the winning in, I think is probably what it would have been. And he was playing Luxem Xander into this list, and we had a really super just crazy game 1 where I got to level to 3 really quickly. Like I dungeon guide and then to 2 and Zephyr dungeon guide to level 3 and get a drawn blade back and draw a card. And then I get to start going off with Prismatic Edge before he's level 3 Xander and his element bonuses are unlocked. I get him down to 1 card in influence with that. I only had 1 ghost on the battlefield, though. I didn't ever really find any other allies to push enough damage. So eventually he was able to claw back into the game and luck some sight up. And I think I had to make him lineage release as well to heal or to recover 6. And it was just awesome. It was just a super crazy game. I think it took like 30 minutes or so. And he finally claws back and gets the win with a big old Light Weaver's Assault. And game 2 was it was a little more. It was also pretty grindy, but thankfully it was grindy in my favor this time. And I found more ghosts this time, and I found a Morgan and stuck it early and stopped him from recovering or lineage releasing there, and got to take game 2 home. But then we had like 3 minutes left, and it just was not, unfortunately, enough time to finish a game, and ended up drawing that, and we both kind of bubbled out there. So. But overall, it was a really fun experience playing the regional. That was awesome to have on day 2 for everybody who did not make top 32 in nationals. So it was great. That list was, oh my God, it was so much fun. I'm very excited. I'm just going to shamelessly like steal all of TCG's list moving forward, actually, because
it's never a bad strategy.
They've all been really, really fun. that water list they premiered at Auckland was like right up my alley, and going from there, this wind list has been awesome. So I'm keeping an eye on them, and just keeping a lookout for what they're doing. So
yeah, for sure. So end of the day, Taylor bubbled out of regionals, sadly. Let's see, Ash had to leave early. Corbin, what was Corbin's performance?
Corbin, he was doing pretty well, but I think he just needed a break. He ended he went into lunch break 1-1-1. But it's just that sets you up for a really grindy day, unfortunately. And he's more sane than I am, apparently, because I was 102 at that point. And I was like, yeah, I'll grind it out.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
yeah. Oh yeah, and he had just worn out. That's right. And so he at 1-1-1, he just decided, I don't think this is worth my day, and just got a little too, eventually, like, Grand Archive is such an intricate game that it's easy to get worn down by it. So especially after you do Nats all day one day, and you start doing grinding regionals the next day. So, but that said, I do really appreciate having that regionals on day 2, where it's like, if you don't make top cut, you still get to play in this. You still can walk out with some really excellent prizes. All you guys got Sapphire packs, which I was kind of a little, just only a little jealous of, because I was super excited about my Nats stuff. But but yeah, it's that was really cool. And after all that,
event points.
Oh yeah, the event points too. Yep, get that Omnidex grind on.
Yep.
After all that, we got to watch top 8 play out for nationals, which is just really incredible. Again, shout out to Steve, who had just come with us to run some decks by us and test with us a little bit the day before. Steve is just a super incredibly skilled player. It was amazing watching him play Luxem Xander. He knew all the lines, everything. He just, man, I did not envy the people who had to play against him, because it just is he's just kind of he's a house. He's an absolute unit with that deck.
Yeah, he knows exactly what he's doing there. He had all the lines down, like front and back. It was a lot of fun to watch him play the day before too, like when we're all jamming some games on Friday and figuring that matchup out.
I never got to say this part. This was my favorite part of this. When he came to our hotel room to test, he said, I said he was between Erupting and Luxem. And what he ultimately decided was that night he was just going to flip a coin and submit that deck list. And he flips his coin, and the coin ends up Luxem Xander, and he qualifies for Worlds playing Luxem Xander. He's, in fact, not just qualifies for Worlds, he was undefeated day 1. And I think completely, right? He went, did he no, he drew. I think he drew. He went 601. He like ID'd the last round, I think.
Yeah, I think
that's
that
right.
Sounds right. Yeah.
I think that's right.
It was either 601 or 61. I forget which one it was, but yeah.
No, I think it was an ID, but then yeah, so then he goes the next day, and doing the math, was pretty sure he just had to win 2 rounds, and then he would probably be pretty smooth sailing into top 8 at that point. And he ends up, I think he won like 3 that day actually, and stuff. But memory might be off there. 2 or 3.
He ended at 8-2-1.
8. Okay, so he won the 2, but still got it. Okay, perfect. Good old Omnidex. It's got all the answers. So yeah, that was awesome. And then we had ultimately, let's just talk a little bit, Taylor, before we close this out, because we're getting a little bit long in the tooth here. But the top 8. We got to see basically the new form of the metagame from nationals. So the winner of the event was Christian Duck Hats on Water Assassin Allies, which was a list that has not been making the rounds at the major events, at least not in any sort of high quantities.
Yeah, it's fairly new. It did show up in let me look this up. It's like one of the, I think it was the Yeti regional. I want to say it took second place.
Oh, we did get one there.
Gwyn on Omnidex took second place with it in that regional at 502, and yeah, I'm not sure if they worked together with Duck Hats or who developed the list or what, but it's barely shown up before this.
Just only a tiny bit. Very cool list that uses the power of Poison Dagger to add damage to your Scepter of Luminous Wings, where a lot of water ally decks are going to rely on sticking a scepter, and then if the opponent can't find the answer to it, dungeon guide, then level dungeon guide the next turn to burst for 12 damage. If you have the poison dagger in play when you do that, though, you get 1 damage from the dagger, and then each level is 5 damage, and the dungeon guides attack for 2 damage instead of 1. It all just adds up really fast, where that poison dagger ends up being like a 6 damage card on that turn, in addition to all the other damage you're dealing, and it just can take you out of nowhere.
Yep, it's insane.
Also gets to play stealth Nias, which is really nice for disrupting particular decks and kind of forcing them into lines of play that are a little less optimal, or just running them out of cards a little bit. So very cool list, and a very well-deserved win. An incredible streamed final match against Matt.
Yes.
With twists and turns, a roller coaster of a 3-game set. Really, really fun to watch. And it was the energy in that area, the viewing area. We were all sitting there in those big comfy chairs watching the projected finals. It was just super fun.
Yep. Also, shout out to Shinja too. Like, it was just a really, and the whole TM32 team. It was a really well done production. Like, the stream was fantastic throughout the weekend. There was like a couple audio hiccups, but it continues to improve with every event, and it's been really exciting to see that develop.
TM32 is absolutely nailing it, and I can't wait to see the quality level that the world stream is at as well.
Yep.
So yeah, our finalists that also included, as I mentioned, Matt on Erupting. Matt's the Erupting master. Matt's the one that you have to get through if you want to call yourself the top Erupting player, and it's going to be very difficult.
Matt is both Dan's idol and the object of his jealous rage.
I mean, I will say that I will say that, like, my deck doesn't cooperate with me. I am certain that some amount of that is that Matt plays into his outs better than me, guaranteed. Where I probably have turns where I am missing lines that will buy me another turn to find the cards, or setting up the right cards in order to push for game, or his list is really cool this year. This event is very different than it's slightly different, but impactfully different than his list that he won or Ontario with.
Yeah, he made some really, really, really smart updates for the event.
Yeah. So Matt was very, very smart decisions, very great player. Incredible, well-deserved second place. Some of the other lists that we saw there, of course, we had a couple of Luxem Xanders, just the Fire Luxem Xander, one of which I believe, or let's see, 3, was it 3 Luxem Xanders?
It was 3, and one of them was water. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's right. 1 water Luxem Xander, and then 2 Fire Luxem Xanders. One of those Fire Luxem Xanders swapped to water in the sideboard, and the other was Steve's, which didn't, I believe. The Water Luxem Xander, very interesting deck list that is very similar to, like, back in DOA, we posted a Water Luxem deck profile that was hitting on some of these ideas, obviously in a different meta, not refined, not using the new level 2 Xander or the insignia of the Korhazi, which are critical Proxy's Vault cards for making this deck work. But that just was kind of neat to see, like, someone good can take this idea and, like, really refine it into something that actually can qualify for Worlds.
Yeah, one of the key thoughts we really missed was, like, just how to efficiently level with that deck. And I think we will probably hit on that in a future podcast episode.
Yeah.
But it really makes or breaks the deck, because if you can get to, like, level 3 and still have a decent amount of cards, it just makes that winning the game so much easier from there.
Yep, absolutely. We also saw a couple more flavors of Water Allies. Water Allies Diana, Water Allies Tenoris. That was played by Ryan, who actually beat me up earlier in the event too. I sat down to get started playing, and I could tell immediately. I was like, "Oh, this guy is on a high level." Like, it was one of those players where, like, I just knew this guy was serious, and he beat me up admirably, and then made his way to Top Cut, which was just awesome. And then the last player, of course, it wouldn't feel right if the North American players who qualify for Worlds didn't include the true champion himself, Caben Schwartzentruber.
Yep, definitely.
So very happy that he was able to make it in as well.
Same here, and very well deserved. Dude has just put up result after result. Clearly has put the time in to learn the format and create these amazing decks like the updated starter deck. As I'm going to lovingly refer to it from now on. No, that's a joke. This is clearly a very well thought out list.
Yeah, it's just so funny though, because like it does include a lot of cards that you get in the Lorraine starter deck.
Yes, yep. But yeah, I mean, like playing with it through the regional that day was just like just kind of seeing all the smart plays that you can make with it, and how you can like kind of maneuver around what your opponent is doing with it is. It's amazing that they put something like this together, because it's just it's a work of art. Actually, the more I look at it and the more I play with it, the more I'm like, wow, this is fantastic.
We sat down to try and make any edits to the deck, and we were like, we were like for 10 minutes, we were like, there's just nothing you can change here. Like this, this list is like perfect.
There's so few flex spots, because it just like everything is there for like a very specific purpose. And it just everything meshes with the deck really, really well.
Yep. So we'll have a link to the. I think I can do this right. I'll have a link to the event on Omnidex. Does that work? That works the way I want it to, because Omnidex is awesome.
Yep.
So down in the description,
if you don't have an Omnidex account yet, you won't be able to view it. But you should also just make an Omnidex account so you can play in Grand Archive tournaments.
Yes, and find events near you and all that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
we'll have a link down there. You can go ahead and check all the deck lists out that we've been talking about. I will have had some pictures on the screen here for some cards, but you still might not know everything, because I'm not able to put 200 cards on the podcast as we're talking about them. So go ahead and check those links out down there. But my big takeaway from this was that this meta is healthy. This is a very, very healthy metagame. This I made a post on Twitter like at midnight at the end of the day that day. Taylor was sleeping. I was there on the content grind still. So I made a Twitter post where I talked about this a little bit, but in this top 8, we have all 3 elements represented. We have combo decks, we have control decks in the Luxem variants, we had aggro decks in the ally variants, we had Ranger, Guardian, Warrior,
Cleric.
Mage. Well, okay, technically there was an Arasana level in Matt's list.
There were Astra cards in the top 2.
It was just there to use for Dusklight Communion, but it was there to screw up the numbers when they ran the stats for everything too. Yeah, I mean, like we saw just a huge variety, with the winner being a Water Ally Xander deck, which again, I just stressed, it was like not like in all these previous major tournaments, it's been some form of Lorraine winning pretty much every time, or Merlin or whatever. And this is finally the first time where Xander came up and said, you know what, you have to respect me. You have to respect this list. And we still saw, champions from ALC from set 1 working together in this top cut, making a very, very robust and I think varied play experience for people. I think this is a great metagame to explore into. I think there's still tons and tons of decks that can make it into these upper echelon as well.
Yeah. I mean, that was like the hardest part of preparing for this tournament, was just trying to nail down what the meta would be. Like, there's just so many viable decks that you could have played going into this event.
Yeah.
That how do you even begin to prepare for all of them, right? And I would say, that was pretty much my lesson learned as well, is just like metagame is in such a sweet spot right now. You can show up with pretty much anything, and as long as you have, know what your deck does, you can be expected to do fairly well. Another thing is just, when you're preparing for these tournaments, try and nail down your list a little earlier than 11:30 the night before. Syl was putting out a tweet. He put out a tweet at like 3:30 in the morning, actually, about how players were submitting their deck lists at 3 in the morning, because you can do that with Omnidex, which is cool, but also and
go to bed.
Nerve-wracking. Exactly. I was a little worried he was talking about us at that point, but we didn't actually get ours submitted until like 8 the next morning. So it was maybe a little worse even, but
yeah, whatever. Yeah, no, that was definitely. I definitely want to be a little more on top of things. My big takeaway from this was that as much as I love erupting, I got to see so many players at this event getting so much more opportunity to use their skill to their advantage with decks that are acting a little more consistently in the way that they want them to. I think Erupting is a wonderful deck that you can spike tournaments with easily if things go your way. If you're a very skilled player like Matt, you can make them go your way.
2 tournaments in a row.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'm certainly not saying that it's not that way. But I was watching, we'll have a whole episode on this in the future, but I was watching players using their material deck, and I felt like I was getting a little bit more just being there, just watching the gameplay, analyzing it, talking to other people around me about things. I felt like I was starting to see some more possibility again in Grand Archive in the all-important material deck, the thing you always have access to, and the way people line up their turns and what they're expecting, playing into certain things, setting up for future turns, playing into outs that the opponent has, baiting opponents into doing certain things. There's so much potential in Grand Archive with not only, how you can just play your cards out but from your hand, but how you can materialize and what sort of sequences you use, and how often you are being flexible and working with exactly what's happening on the board to decide which cards to materialize when. That I felt like I have so much really to continue to improve on in just sort of my core fundamentals of the game, that I'm excited to get back and play decks that are just acting more consistently so that I can really improve my ability to decision make turn by turn as well.
The next 2 months leading up to Ascent Worlds are going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to learn a lot of things as a team. It's going to be pretty sick. And yeah, as we sign off here too, I'm going to give one last shout out to Ash and Corbin as well for the amount of work they put in testing these lists and getting them to the spot where we wanted them, and just getting the reps in. It was awesome working with them and getting, even though we did not end up on our list with Ash and Corbin, their input was extremely valuable. I think we all would have had a much worse event if not for them. So,
absolutely,
big thank you to them, and also thank you, David, for stopping on earlier in the episode. If you're in the area, if you're remotely in the area, go check out the regional at the Banish Zone. It's going to be a really good time. I think everybody's going to have a lot of fun there, and there's lots of cool prizes to be won. So anyway, thank you, listeners, for going on this journey a little longer than usual, but we hope it was interesting. We'll be back again 2 weeks from now on Friday for another episode of the Recollection Step podcast. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you later.
Bye.